Welcome back to another exciting episode of Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times. Sometimes I operate at a, high velocity, high altitude, high whatever. I'm not high. Hey, it's chill. I'm high on God. But in a fraction of a second, I added exciting to my intro. And I was wondering, all this was happening in fractions of a second. I was like, I should say exciting. I said exciting. And then I was wondering in the back of my mind, am I going to remember the rest? And I did. So anyway, that was a waste of an introduction, but hello and welcome back. Today's episode is focused on choosing your identity so that it resembles your virtues, your values, your Chanoguk self versus having an identity of being anything else, being somebody who struggles. I can't do that. Life is so hard. I'm a failure. I'm not worthy of the blessing. I'm going to be stuck with pornography for the rest of my life. These are subtle things that don't scream out at us, that we don't say out loud, but it's what we feel. It's what we feel when you see the statistics that every country that we have in our movement, there's always more gals than guys going to the blessing, because so many guys are really struggling with self-worth, right? But we all do to some degree, but it's debilitating for many people to the point where they can't even believe that they're worthy of marriage, of the blessing, of eternal love, right? But that's the past. The future is that there's giant gates open to this thing called Chanoguk, and we're all invited, but it starts with living as a citizen of Chanoguk. There's a way of doing that. There's a way of optimizing your life so that it resembles the best of you rather than the rest of you or the worst of you. So that's what today's about. Get into this if you want to learn how to markedly, poignantly, positively increase the Chanoguk in your life day over day, so that you can evolve into your Chanoguk self. Click away if you just want to be a sad sack and you don't want to progress in life at all. Let's get into it. Welcome back, everybody. You have a great day. You know why? Because it's another day. We get to live on this planet. Couldn't be more stoked about that, especially since we're talking about something that's really, really important. Your identity. And I'm not here to steal your identity. I'm not one of those people. I'm just here to offer you a perspective because I think a lot of people make too many assumptions about themselves. They don't know themselves. They think, oh, I'm like this. And they don't realize that they can customize this journey. And when it comes to high noon, when we meet people, we're meeting them in a very interesting place because we work with people on the whole, people who have something that they're striving for. They want to be a certain type of person. These are called ideals. But they know that they fall short of the ideals. And so for many people, that's when their identity starts to become, I'm a failure. Why? Because I'm not over there. I'm not where I want to be, and I want to be over there. So therefore, I'm a failure. And this doesn't have to be the case. We can navigate this terrain. So let's navigate together. Will you join me, compass in hand, as we go on this journey? So some things to go over is that, in order to talk about identity, I need to kind of lay out some ground rules here, is that it's how we identify. And this is trigger city, right? Because people are making some wild assertions. I identify as this, therefore it's true, right? Whether it's, I saw, again, it's not the point of this podcast, so I'm not going to go too deep into this, but there was some people who I believe identify as mermaids, and that's what they think they are, allegedly, apparently. And so I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about delusion. Again, got to watch my mouth here. This is not my podcast, the High Noon Podcast. I'm not talking about make-believe, but I'm talking about the feedback loop that is life. Because let's just use logic as the basis of our reality. A criminal who's robbed a bank, they're like, well, I don't identify as a criminal, right? And there's validity to that, but there's also limitations to that. And let me unpack that. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? It's one of my favorites. I've watched it over 100 times at least. And I've watched it with my kids now, and they like it somehow. They understand the jokes. I didn't know if they would, but they did. And at some point, they are eating groundhog. If you see the movie, you'll remember this. But they're eating groundhog or gophers in the forest. They're on the run from the law, and they see a bunch of people kind of walking and singing, and it's very strange behavior. But they're walking to the river, and these people are all going to get baptized. And I forget all the names of the characters. It's been a while. But one of the dumb guy, who's the short guy, who looks like he's one of my ancestors. Oh, God, that was painful. I took a shot at myself. I didn't even know that was possible. He says he gets baptized. He gets fully into it. And George Clooney's, part of this group. He's very skeptical of religion. He's skeptical of all, miracles or anything like that. So this guy gets baptized and is like, look, I'm a changed man. The pastor said that the Lord and I are one, and I'm squared with him. For all my transgressions, they are gone. I am a new man. And now I don't have to go back to jail, because these guys all ran away from jail. And George Clooney says, just because you're squared with the Lord, it doesn't mean that you're squared with the law of man, right? So it's a very good kind of framework that, we can be redeemed, and we can identify as being redeemed, right? I've experienced this. That's one of the greatest things that you could ever experience is redemption, is grace, the grace of God. This is an unbelievable and powerful experience. But if you've made mistakes and if you've hurt other people, there's still what we call indemnity to be paid. There's still, your transgressions, these mistakes that you made, they're still lingering out there in the form of cosmic debt. So even though we don't identify as what we were in the past still exists. And I know what are these people? The metaverse people might not agree or whatever, but come on. If you made mistakes, there's still prices to be paid. So I'm just laying the groundwork here to understand that you can absolutely change your identity. That's a very good example. Is I always identified as not being religious. In fact, I was always anti-religious. And that was a part of my identity. Is like, religion, that's so stupid. Those people over there, they look like idiots. Oh my God. And that's how I sounded before I joined the church. And it was like so important. And when I started to learn about God and started to pray and all this stuff, that was my first major concern was, oh my goodness, am I going to be one of those people that says God and that prays to God? Oh my God, I hate those people. That's so embarrassing. So that was like, this was going on inside of me. And I remember it being a legitimate pain. It was painful. I felt hot in my face. I felt churning in my belly, because that's what happens when you start shifting your identity. This doesn't happen very often in our lives, but not only should it happen fairly regularly, but we should be updating our hard drive at least as often as we update our phones. For God's sake, how often is there? Anyway, I don't want to start a war here, but I'm an iOS guy, right? And I get these updates, and sometimes I wait a while because I'm just getting used to this interface. Why you got to change so much? But you got to keep up. Right? So if we're updating our phones so that they can operate in their fastest, most efficient, optimized form, we should be doing the same with ourselves. And that requires identity updates, okay? So I want to create a framework here again. To me, it's if you go back to an earlier episode of like what comprises the self, the individual, we're made up of 4 components as far as I can tell, and this is biblical, which is the mind, the heart, the body, and the soul, right? So these are all individual parts of a synchronicity, of a synergistic entity known as the self, okay? And each of these aspects of ourself, the mind, the heart, the body, and soul, when we operate in a certain way, when we're living a certain way, they function a certain way. right? So let's say you're hanging out with a bunch of reprobates, a bunch of hooligans, and you're used to making fun of each other. Nobody's allowed to share emotions because that's stupid and blah, blah, blah. Then what happens to your heart and what happens to your spirit? You start to repress a huge part of who you really are, and you have to pretend like you're this or like that. This is a sad reality for many people, is that they repress their deepest version of themselves, their mistakes, their trauma, their pain, their emotional side in order to fit in. And that just doesn't work, okay? In terms of high noon, what we notice is that people who have a long-term relationship with escapism, especially in the form of pornography, masturbation, using sexuality as a form of running away from their problems, running away from God, these people then, out of survival, start to kind of negate a huge portion of who they are, their identity. And they start to identify as somebody who doesn't deal well with problems, right? Somebody who escapes, somebody who's not strong. That's why we have so many young guys in our movement who don't go to the blessing. They don't get married. It's not that they don't want love. Every single person on this planet, even those sad souls, those sad sacks out there who say that love isn't even real. And I've met these people, and I didn't even know what to say. I didn't even know how to begin a thought to counter that, because it was like so far out of the realm of what I thought was possible to think. But even then, all of us, we need love desperately. But there's so many people who don't feel deep down that they can love and be loved. I talk to them regularly. They're all over the place. It's, I would say, most people. And you'd say to me, well, Andrew, that's an exaggeration. Look at how people act to themselves. Most people have so much self-loathing, and it's evident in their actions, how they treat themselves, the food that they eat, the thoughts in their head, how they speak to themselves, how they treat their neighbors. I saw somebody a few days ago who raised a hard middle finger to somebody in traffic. And I was confounded because I get frustration in traffic. People drive like fools a lot of the time. In fact, just ask Benji about his driving experience out here in Denver where I live. He has nothing good to say about Denver drivers. But honestly, Benji, chill. You got to chill. But even in the worst of times, when somebody's acting belligerent, the middle finger says, I mean, it's got the swear word in there, but what it means, the intent is, I hate you, right? It's like really disconnected from that person's going through their own stuff. It's just like, you're dead to me. I hate you, right? So this all has to be, understood, please, okay? I want to unpack all this. I feel like I'm going off on so many tangents. Let's focus. I want to talk about identifying as your Chanaguk self. This is something that our movement has to start doing, in order to thrive. And I don't control our movement, but what I do is I help people to get from where they're at, which is stuck, to being more of their Chanaguk self. How do we do that? It's through an identity process, re-identifying, right? So let's deconstruct ourselves in these 4 areas. A lot of people, again, they come to us with, remember, mind, heart, body, spirit. At least one of these is almost empty, if not all of them are depleted, right? When any one of these are depleted in the least, you start to feel off, right? And I want to unpack this. In terms of the mind, when you start to lose control of your thoughts, when you don't have the identity of somebody who is taking full responsibility for their life, then your mind can attack you. It's bananas, because our mind is not, free and clear of our control. It shouldn't be. But for a lot of people, they completely lose control of their thoughts, and their thoughts take them to some very dark places. Thinking about themselves in very hateful ways, thinking about resentful feelings towards others, having really dark, violent thoughts, or just destructive thoughts. it's really wild, right? This happens when you compare yourself to who you feel you should be, or compare yourself to others. Also, when you lose control of your mind, you lose focus. How many of us, you start your work day or your school day and you're very productive, and then little by little you watch one video, two videos, and then you find yourself completely off course. You're like, what am I doing? Wasting my time. You click off from YouTube or Instagram or whatever, and then it's so hard to regain focus. It's like you've given away your mind to your lower self. Your lower self came knocking, and you're like, oh, you want my mind? Sure, I'll give you all the attention that you want, lower self. I'll watch videos about cats falling downstairs. Sure. How long? Hour and a half? I got that. Here you go. Here's my mind. Here's my focus. Here's my attention. We also lose control. Let's think about the heart. When you lose control of your emotions, I mean, that's not hard to imagine. That's that guy who gave the middle finger. That's not who he wants to be. Nobody wants to be that, right? But when we lose control, I've seen some people I love completely lose control of their emotions, and they're scary. People who lose control of their emotions are possessed by that emotion. I think I've talked about this on this podcast, but I even talk about this with my kids, is when they're angry, it starts to possess them. The emotion possesses them. And I could just say, look at your hands right now. Are they angry hands? And they look down and it's like they have clenched fists, because anger is very much like this, right? For all of you just listening to this, it's clenched. It's ready to explode. It's like the retraction before the explosion, right? But sadness too. Sadness is this heaviness. When you're possessed by sadness, it's hard to get out of bed, right? So these emotions, sadness, anger, are not bad, but when they possess us, when they control us, then we've lost control of ourselves. We've given control to these emotions. Our soul, again, there's something in us that perpetuates our body and our thinking. It's crazy. Our mind isn't in control. It's like we can choose where we focus. So then we can choose where to put our mind. What's guiding your mind if not itself? What gives us the ability to think out about our thoughts? It's the fact that we're spiritual beings, right? So self-awareness, this idea of contemplation and saying, wow, I've been really lazy. I want to focus. I want to watch less social media. I want to read more books. I want to exercise more. This is the spirit moving the mind to focus so that the body can spring into action. And when we've lost control of our spirit, then we're living without direction, without conviction, and we just wander. Things are just harder. Basic things, conversations, relationships become very difficult. Sustaining true joy, lasting joy, being optimistic. These are all like things that get sacrificed when we lose control of our soul. And last is our body. So when we lose control of our body, this is like not hard to imagine. It's called potato chips. It's called ice cream. It's called name your poison. For me, what was it? I think back in the day, so I started grocery shopping. I looked like I was 12 when I was 17. And when I was about 16, I started doing grocery shopping for the family. Long story, but my mom would give me her debit card and a carte blanche and say, go grocery shopping. And my whole life I had to eat healthy, but at that phase, nobody's really watching. So I just started eating some stuff. I would buy cookie dough, chocolate chip cookie dough, and I would just eat the whole thing, Bake it, not bake it. What's the diff? If you're Canadian, then you know about all-dressed potato chips. I started eating those. And I started to get all these, I didn't realize this at the time, but I started to get all these stomach pains and cramps. And I just completely lost my standard, which is funny because I did this at 16. And then by 17, I was eating so well. I was eating I had this lunch that I would make every day, and I started working out. I started bulking up a little bit. For me, it means like I broke 100 pounds. It's not saying much, but I was eating really well, and I bounced back by 17 because I realized that it feels terrible. When I was eating badly, I lost so much motivation for anything. Stopped doing homework, stopped doing anything. I lost focus, right? And then I started realizing, like, when I eat well, when I exercise, I have so much more energy. I can focus in class. I could do better in school. And that feels nice to have teachers pat me on the back instead of slap me in the face. So yeah, losing control of the body is a slippery slope, right? And it doesn't mean never having dessert. It just means, living intentionally, right? So in terms of your identity, when we are building ourselves up to become citizens of Chanoguk, I ask people questions that people don't ask themselves, which is like, what do we eat in Chanoguk? Chances are Korean food. That's probably on the table, right? Meat, cappuccino. If you go to I was going to say Chanoguk. If you go to Chanoguk, that's not coffee. That's just water. If you go to Champyeong, there are like 6 places to buy cappuccinos. So I'm pretty sure we're going to have cappuccinos in Chanoguk in reasonable quantities, right? But if you think about your Chanoguk self, there's stuff that person eats and in certain frequencies and quantities. And they probably don't eat at a buffet. I could probably say that confidently, right? You're probably not eating cake for breakfast. Only on holy days, y'all. I'm about to have one. It's True Children's Day coming up out here. And we're going to have cake for breakfast. Well, my kids are. I've realized that when I have cake for breakfast, I can't think for the rest of the day. So I'm not going to. But yeah, in Chanoguk, there's a way that you will operate. And so how does that version of you in Chanoguk think? How do they feel? How do they deal with complicated situations? How do they eat, right? So let's talk about mind, heart, body, spirit. When you see through that lens, then you start constructing that version of yourself, and that becomes your identity. I am a citizen of Chanoguk. We say the family pledge, and the assumption in the family pledge is that we are citizens of Chanoguk. But if that's not, it's not like, hey, we're citizens of Chanoguk, so thanks God. It's like, as an owner of Chanoguk, so as a citizen, as a participant and a builder of a better world, that's the first part. Then the second part is, this is how I will live. So it's the presumption as an owner. So as somebody who's living this way, I will do these things. So that's that's pre-built. Out of the box, we have family pledge. But in terms of yourself and your journey towards sexual integrity, your journey towards heavenly sexuality, that means your North Star goal. It means habituating being your Chanoguk self. So in terms of, let's talk about mind. How do you orient your mind so that you focus intentionally on the things you want to focus on? So if that's work, great. If it's, for me, it's gratitude. Right now, I realize, I would say with great conviction, that gratitude is the single most important ingredient to a life worth living. And it's essentially the purpose of all religions, all real serious religions. Anyone that doesn't prove this thesis right is not a real religion, according to my statement. So gratitude is what I've been prioritizing with great prejudice, right? I've been really like, if I'm not grateful, I can see my life starting to get increasingly discernibly worse. When I do focus on gratitude, everything becomes lighter and things start to flow much more easily, okay? So when my mind focuses on gratitude, and this is like how I fall asleep and this is how I wake up, then what happens is my heart starts to follow and I start to feel good, okay? So this is a great example about, I ask people, how do you want to wake up? Well, how does your Chanoguk self wake up? So in the past, up until fairly recently, I'd wake up and the first many thoughts that would come to me would be negative or worrisome or like, oh, I got to do this today or this today, this today. This is just my habit. But since I've been practicing this gratitude, I catch it really quickly and I say, oh no, yes, I will focus on gratitude. Start to think about what to be grateful for. That becomes my mind. Okay, my mind, go this way. Look for gratitude. You say, send it, go get it, go get it. Like a little dog. It starts sniffing around. It's like, oh, I could be grateful for this. I could be grateful for this. The next step is you start to feel grateful. Gratitude starts to swell up within you. You can actually feel it in your heart. It starts to permeate throughout your body, and it's really exciting. It's exhilarating, actually. And then what does that do? It gives your spirit ammunition to do great things that day. And then throughout the day, your body can move in accordance, in allegiance to that gratitude. So it starts in the mind, then goes to your heart, transfers to your spirit, and then manifests in your body. And all of a sudden now you're living in gratitude. This is how simple it is. It's like, oh, I just made this one switch. My entire days are different. And I still am not perfect because sometimes I have super early meetings. Last week I had a 6 a.m. meeting. That means not only did it start at 6 a.m., I had to be functional and look like, a human being by that time. So, I had to kind of really get myself together and prepare myself and then be ready. So I was perking. So I was able to find some gratitude, but I wasn't able to do my full exercise. So I had to course correct throughout the day to compensate. But I'm exercising this gratitude muscle and it's opening up all sorts of possibilities in my life, okay? So that's mind. Again, heart is like, which emotions do you want to normalize in your life? Do you want to normalize sadness? Go ahead. But that's not your Chanelguk self. In Chanelguk, there will be sadness, but it's hard to be sad when you have so many people cheering you on, holding you, hugging you, letting you liberate this sadness, right? It's so much more normal in a healthy society to get through difficulty because you lift the weight of each other. So we don't have the weight of the world on our shoulders exclusively. Okay. So think about which emotions you want to focus on and you practice those. Again, gratitude is a thought that then transmutes into an emotion, but it could be, other things like, I don't know. I think so many good things spring out from gratitude. But if you want to practice other emotions, like being a more optimistic, joyful person, being encouraging of others, being encouraging of yourself, these are all practices that if you watch your heart, because when you're intentional with your emotions, you notice when you're drifting towards sadness. And again, doesn't mean that you avoid it. It just means that, oh, we'll visit here, hug sadness a bit, and then we'll move on with our day and keep on going, right? It's how you can liberate things. Then spiritually, like what is going into your senses and how does that make you feel? I realize that I do stuff on social media because of High Noon. It's, I'm trying to be active and do stuff. But if I spend any amount of time, especially on Instagram, I start to become very pessimistic and worrisome. It impacts my spirit because it's not just emotions. It like lingers. And I start to worry about the future so much. And then my energy is being siphoned towards worry and concern rather than towards building. So I have to be very careful. We all have to be very careful what goes into our eyes, our ears, our senses, because it impacts our spirit. And when you're really cultivating God's word and prayer, it gives you this spark that you can't get anywhere else because it's connecting you to eternity. It's connecting to you to something so much bigger than any of us, any of our lives. It doesn't mean that we're insignificant, but we are just parts of a larger story. And so we are both the micro and the macro. We're the past, present, and the future. We are everything that Jesus says he was, right? Which is, I am. We are too, because we're descendants. We're children of God. Our parent, at the end of the day, is a creator. And when you can remind yourself of that, then the grade that you got on your exam, if it was a 36, and I had a 36 in one of my classes once, I think in high school. We don't have to dwell on that, but I know what it feels like. But then it doesn't become your identity. Your identity is a child of God because your spirit's actually connected to that. Not just ideas and philosophy, but your essence feels connected to eternity. That's unbelievable. And we have access to that 24/7. We just don't point our spirit in that direction unless we're intentional. So how does your Chanelguk self identify in terms of their spirituality? And last is body. And this is a big one. Because Benji and I talk about exercise a lot, and it seems one-dimensional. It seems like broad time. Like, hey, how much protein are you crushing? How are your macros doing, bro? And it sounds stupid, but what we're learning, for anybody who's paying attention, is how deeply interconnected our self-worth, our ability to be positive, our ability to be mentally agile, emotionally agile, is connected to our physical agility. Like, they've found that when you exercise into your 80s and 90s, you live longer. It self-perpetuates, right? Health creates more health. Disease creates more disease. Stagnation creates stagnation. So it transfers to your different selves. So if you're mentally stagnant, emotionally stagnant, spiritually stagnant, it's most likely going to inhibit you from being physically healthy. But the inverse is true as well. Sometimes when you're just stuck in your head, you're depressed or whatever, the first thing you need to do is just move your body, right? So you can't see it, but I was realizing like going to the gym was becoming such a hassle. And all I like to do these days is kettlebells. So I just bought some. I didn't know you could do this. You can buy kettlebells on Amazon. It's weird. And I feel bad for whoever brought the 1,000-pound kettlebell. Just kidding. But I did buy some weights and they were heavier than what you should order on Amazon. But I do them now as a part of waking my spirit up because I'm focusing my mind. I never want to do it, but once I get started, I start to get this chemical release, which feels so nice. My body's like, yeah. Today, I even did a set, and after, I just started saying gibberish. I was like, I just felt so mighty and powerful. It gets, as a man, your testosterone flowing. It starts to build you up. After a good session, your mind is now clear and open to start thinking in new ways because you're getting things flowing. You're getting your blood pumping, your heart is pumping blood out to all of your extremities. If you stretch well and all this, then it's just all moving and flowing. And that's what we want for every one of our 4 aspects, right? This is having a hearty debate with somebody or reading a new book or being exposed to new art. The other day I was at Meow Wolf, and if you've never been to a Meow Wolf, they are the craziest, most otherworldly places. It's like, I was trying to describe to my kids before I went what we were going to go see, and I was like, it's like an art gallery, except you jump inside the art, and that's exactly what it is. It's the craziest place, but it inspired so many thoughts and ideas because it's just crazy. I don't even know how to explain it, but you just go to different things. I went to the symphony with my other son. We went to go to this candlelight thing where we listened to Hans Zimmer with thousands of candles in this old church, and we were transposed to another world. It was so cool, right? So you do these things and it stimulates you in new ways, and that's how life flows through you. It's unbelievably exciting. But it will never happen unless you identify as somebody who can have those things occur to them. Because I could be saying all this stuff and you could say, wow, that sounds cool, but I'm not that kind of guy. I don't leave my house. So I don't like to exercise. I don't like to do new things, Well, you might not like to exercise, but your body certainly does, right? So it's not about lifting weights or anything. It's just finding ways to move your body, okay? Finding ways to move your mind. Grow your mind, stimulate your mind, finding ways to expand your heart, having new people come into your life and learning how to love them and support them, right? Spiritually, doing uncomfortable things because they're the things that need to be done. When you start living like this, your identity starts to resemble your ideals. You inherently progress and evolve into your Chanaguk self. That is life. When you start doing that, you will stop struggling with your addictions. You will stop running away from your life to your phone. You'll stop running to pornography. You'll stop using things that are inherently beautiful like sexuality as a tool of escapism and running away from God. And instead, you will take that energy and it will perpetuate you towards the one true, beautiful, heavenly parent, our God. So I hope this is clear. Our identity we can re-identify, but it starts as a hypothesis of like who you want to be. And that is how you want to wake up, how you want to use your time and attention, what you want to focus your mind on, your emotions on, how you want to use your body, right? So when you start to have this proposal and you start to practice based on intentional living, according to your virtues, your values, life starts to become exhilarating and your addiction becomes life instead of death. Porn, drugs, drinking, all these things used as tools of escape bring you closer and closer to death, spiritual death, mental death, physical death, you name your poison. When you start to optimize your life for life itself, then your addiction becomes being alive. And it should be addiction. Like we're all technically addicted to breathing because the consequence of not is death, right? But we don't feel it as urgently when we're not breathing in our hearts and our souls until we get totally cut off, and that leads us to depression. What is that? That's suffocating, the suffocation of your soul, right? So please, stimulate yourself to experience life. That's through intentional living, how you wake up, where you spend your energy physically, where you put your attention, where you focus your emotions. These all give you either a great day that then turns into great days, that turns into great weeks and great months, that creates a life worth living, or it's just your life becomes more and more escaping and escaping because your life feels more and more out of control. Those are your options over time, scaled over time. Anyway, that's a lot for you to process and to chew on, but I gave you the works today. I feel alive. I hope you feel alive too. And I hope that hope is alive. I don't know what that means. Just didn't know how to end that sentence. So anyway, have a great day, everybody. Hope this was helpful. Reach out to any of us at High Noon if you need anything at all. Not money, not like, I don't know, chia pets. I don't know if you remember those. I don't have chia pets.